Coming to you from the Tar Heel State, this is the Carolina Commercial Real Estate Connection, bringing you industry insights and hot takes from Carolina real estate experts, helping you begin, grow, and scale your commercial real estate portfolio. And now your hosts, Tony Johnson and Cameron Pearson.
Thank you for joining us today for Carolina Commercial Real Estate Connection. Today we have Levi Hemingway on with us. He is an owner of Nomad Capital here in Wilmington, North Carolina. They specialize in self-storage buildings and units. They do new development, and they do building modifications to repurpose buildings into storage. And so we're really excited to have him and hear about what they've got going on these days. So Levi, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Could you tell us a little bit? You got a great family story, and yours is a family business as well. Could you give us a little background on yourself and your business?
Yeah, so the condensed version is originally from Arizona, born and raised there until I was about 13 years old. My dad was a residential and commercial builder there, had his own company. And we had an opportunity to move to Costa Rica, and he had an opportunity to build second homes for people down in Costa Rica.
Very cool.
So we moved down there when I was 13 years old, lived there for about a year and a half, and we moved down to Costa Rica right in 2007. And so while we were down there, obviously 2008 happened, and nobody was building second homes. Everything was, 2008 in the United States. And so my parents had always talked about doing an extended traveling, something extended traveling with their family. I'm one of six, by the way. I'm the second oldest. And so they'd always talked about living on a sailboat. So when building kind of dried up in Costa Rica, we had the idea to buy a sailboat and live on a sailboat as a family. So we sold everything, moved to Greece, bought a 36-foot catamaran, and we had planned to live on it for about a year. And 6 months into the trip, my mom was pregnant with my youngest brother. And so my dad said, "Hey, do you want to go back to the States and have this baby?" And my mom said, "No, people have babies all over the world," which is true. This does happen. And so we ended up sailing. We started in Greece, sailed to Turkey, and then my youngest brother was born in Israel. And so after that, it was about a year and a half on the boat. My dad was saying like, "Hey, we got to start heading back to the United States." And people told us, "Hey, your boat can cross the ocean." And we're like, "Wait, this boat?" And they're like, "Yeah, you guys can cross the ocean in that." And we're like, we never really thought of, we're from Arizona originally. There's zero ocean in Arizona. So, we could talk, we could go on and on about just sailboat stories and horror stories and all the things we learned there. But started heading back west and just figured, hey, the closer we get back to the United States, the cheaper the plane tickets will be. So we ended up crossing the Mediterranean, and we actually sailed down the coast of Africa, out to the Cape Verde Islands, crossed the Atlantic Ocean with 8 of us on a 36-foot catamaran, 18 days across the ocean, and went through the Caribbean, went through the Bahamas, and landed in Wilmington, North Carolina.
That's amazing.
So
was the plan to come to Wilmington, or that's just coming? You guys were like, "Oh, we're done. This is far."
That's all we made it to. Yeah. So the plan was not to go back to Arizona, because we had, we left Arizona by the time we were on the boat and going back to the United States, with Costa Rica. We'd been away from the U.S. for like 4 years and just wanted something different. And obviously we'd loved living near the water because we'd lived on the water for 3.5 years. So we kind of picked the East Coast to kind of relocate, and we had it narrowed down to, Wilmington, Charleston, or Savannah was kind of our top 3 choices. Started in Wilmington and just fell in love and never left.
Well, that's amazing. We're happy to have you.
Yeah. So that's how we got to Wilmington. We took the long way around.
And when did you get to Wilmington?
We got to Wilmington in 2012.
Okay.
So
good.
So, okay. So now we got you in Wilmington, your family's relocated here. So kind of give us then the story, how you got informed Nomad Capital, and kind of let's get a background on that.
Yeah. So we moved here. I was 17, just graduating high school. We were homeschooled on the boat. We were homeschooled in Arizona as well. So that transition for schooling onto the boat was pretty seamless because we were already used to it. And so when we got back here, I was going through the process to be a firefighter. I was a volunteer firefighter for New Hanover County. And then at the same time, my dad was completely restarting his business because, we're in a new place. So he was kind of getting going. He bought some tools and was kind of working for other contractors at the time, just picking up whatever work he could, trying to network and, just meet people in Wilmington. And so I just decided then that I wanted to work with my dad for the next little bit. I didn't really know that it would turn into what it is now 10 years later. But at the time it was, hey, let's, I'm going to help him kind of get the business off the ground and do that. So we basically started just doing work for other contractors, other house flippers. There was a lot of people flipping houses. And so we would do the grunt work of it, the framing, the crawl space work, the floor stuff, everything that they hired the grunt laborers to do. That was us. Right. And so we started off doing that, and then, kind of saved up some capital, and we did our first fix and flip, which was in Ardmore over in off of 17th Street. Carolina Place is over there right next to that. Yeah. So bought a house. We did an addition off the back. It was a 2-1 and we converted it to a 3-2. So we added a master suite off the back. Pretty typical for a flipper, adding that extra bedroom and bathroom. We did everything ourselves. We framed it. We did the block, the concrete, the trim, everything besides the trades we did ourselves. Sold that and rolled most of that over into our first self-storage project in North Carolina, which was a project on 4th and Red Cross. It was the old Wilmington printing company. Mm-hmm. So it was funny. My dad was having a beer one night at Fly Trap, and he was having a beer with my mom, and he said, hey, that would be a great building for self-storage. It had a for sale sign. And we come to find out later that it had been for sale for 4 years. And the seller... It had been for sale for 4 years.
It's called?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do I still own that?
So he had this, it was just an awkward building. There was no windows in it. So he said, hey, let's put this thing under contract. So he did. And the first thing that the seller gives him is he says, oh, yeah, great. First thing under due diligence is here's 2 estimates to tear the building down, because the last people that had it under contract wanted to demo it. Mm-hmm. And my dad's like, why would you tear this down? It's a great building. It's a solid building, block, brick, just really well built. So anyways, that was our first project into self-storage. So back up a little bit. In Arizona, my dad built his first self-storage facility in 2006, right before, obviously, we moved to Costa Rica. So that was in lease up. And that was one of the reasons that facility was one of the things that was able to give us some residual income while we traveled. Mm-hmm. And so we still own that property. My dad still owns that property. We actually just expanded it. It opened up a month ago, a 30,000 square foot expansion. Mm-hmm. So, we're back in Wilmington, we're kind of flipping houses. And by then, the facility in Arizona is Kachina Mini Storage. It was doing really well. And my dad was, so the summer we did that house, we basically framed and did all the work through summer in Wilmington, which is pretty miserable. My dad says you can only change your shirt so many times in a day before you ask the question, like, all right, what else can we do? Because I'm not going to do this long term. I'm not going to sweat through shirts. And so that's when the building on 4th Street kind of came into play is, hey, let's get back into self-storage. So we kind of did that. So we did that project, and we still own it today at City Storage North for us. But at the same time as we were converting that, we were continuing to build out our residential side. We've got a GC license. And so we were started doing some other work for some other flippers. We were kind of the GC, and then we got into spec homes, did a couple of spec homes, did some custom homes. So we kind of had these 2 tracks running. We kind of had the self-storage side of things, and then we had the residential side of things. And it was great. And we were just kind of bootstrapping our portfolio. So when we'd sell a spec home, we'd kind of roll everything into a self-storage facility. And then when we would, it was basically the residential side was feeding this commercial, more passive income side of things. And so, we did that for a couple of years, really bootstrapped with me and my dad. And then we started to grow out the team. And we'd heard about this idea of syndication throughout the time as we were doing that. You raise money from investors, you're taking point as a as the general partner, you're running point on it, you're finding the deals. And in our case, we're building out the deals because we're the general contractor. You can scale a lot faster. And we'd heard this from people, and we kind of were just learning everything we could about the syndication space because it was new for us. Self-storage wasn't really new and building wasn't really new, but this idea of, banding investors together to take down projects and doing it multiple times was new. And so as we were kind of scaling up ourselves, we kept hitting the ceiling of, we kept finding these great deals, but we didn't have the capital because we were, bootstrapping to the max, every penny
taking
we had
every penny from each one of these projects you're flipping.
We're flipping. And then every penny, we make 60 grand. It's a great payday, but it's all, every penny of it's going into this commercial project. And then we'd refinance, and every penny of the refinance is going into the purchase of this next building. So we kept hitting these ceilings of, man, we could do more deals. It came down to capital, right? Meanwhile, we're learning about the syndication idea. So 2020 is when we decided to actually launch Nomad Capital. And it's exactly that. It's a self-storage syndication. And so we raise money from investors, and we're the general partner, and we're still finding the deals. We still do the build out through our Elm Builders, which is our building company. And then we in-house manage with our City Storage Management brand. So Nomad Capital was born in 2020, and it's been awesome. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's funny, we go through this and we talk to several different people, and it seems like most of them have started in the flipping. You get into the flipping, you get into that lane, if you will, but it always grows in what we're talking about here. And then capital being the issue, which is why the syndication is so important. And learning about that's really interesting. So,
well, it was funny because we kept saying, man, if we had more capital, we could do more deals. And then we'd talked to several other people, and they said, man, we've got all this capital, we just can't find deals. And it's like, I think we're smart enough, to put these two things together and actually have something worth exploring. So those two conversations were happening kind of simultaneously. And then it was Nomad Capital. So,
yeah, I think that's a fantastic story that you have as a family. And I think it's important to note, you guys had those two streams and have started and have stayed very niche to what and which is why I feel like you've been so successful. There's a lot of people that just kind of see all the little, great little shiny objects and jump on all these different tracks, right? And lose focus. And I think the thing with you guys is you are storage focused 100%. And you know how to operate a storage facility, how to do them right. You have the cost analysis down. You've created this great, differentiator for yourself building modifications with storage units, which I think is a great little niche. So, could we go in and understand a little bit more about your model? So, with the first building, that sounds like it was your first, light coming on in your head. Well, hey, why don't we convert this just vacant building into a storage unit? And then kind of it's taken off from there. So can you give us kind of how you guys evaluate and what you do when you see those kind of buildings?
Absolutely. So, my dad's the facility he built in Arizona was ground up construction. And we'd done spec homes, residential ground up is different than commercial, but still bringing something out of the dirt. It's a lot of work, as you know, that goes into that, permitting, planning, engineering, all that good stuff. So our first conversion was City Storage North. It was this great building that nobody else could kind of figure out what to put inside of it. People looked at demoing it to build, multifamily, or people looked at a food hall. They come up with these different things, a mixed retail building, and it just didn't pencil enough. But self-storage penciled great there. And the fact, one of the things people notice is like, hey, it doesn't have any windows in the building, and we didn't need windows. It's a very small thing, but you don't need windows in self-storage. So that was our first conversion, and we converted it because we didn't have to do any civil engineering. We didn't have to redo the parking lot. We didn't have to do, our permit that we submitted for was a renovation permit because it already fell within the zoning that self-storage was allowed there. So we're filing a renovation permit. And, the bulk of our work was, demoing out some old offices, just opening the whole place up, obviously new electrical, mechanical, That facility doesn't even have a bathroom in it because you don't need one. We don't have an on-site manager there. So there's zero plumbing in the building.
Wow.
Yeah, that's about as easy as it gets.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty straightforward from a building side of things.
Yeah.
And we really liked that model. We really liked that a lot. It just felt like it felt like we could move a lot quicker when we identified a project. We could move and build out a lot quicker than if we identified a piece of land before we're actually putting a shovel in the ground.
Absolutely. I mean, going in, taking this as from a renovation side, for those who are listening that aren't too familiar with construction, I mean, he has no rezoning, which that could take 6 to 12 months alone, has no civil, which all the civil going through county's technical review committee, and changes in parking lot again could take 6 to 8 months to get drawings and go through all the city approvals. So getting rid of all of that gets you to be able to make money so much quicker. And like you've said, you had a great plan and you didn't even require bathrooms. I mean, what a great first flip, obviously. Yeah. So yeah, obviously once you guys tackled that, you were like, my goodness gracious, that was probably a massive home run.
Yeah.
And so, you get something like that, and obviously then you're off to the races. You've created a different product that works. So yeah, now you've done multiple ones of that premise at this point, right?
Yeah. So we bootstrapped our first couple of projects. So we did city stores north and south. We bought a project over on the south side of Wilmington that was already existing storage. It just wasn't climate controlled. So we look at anytime we're going into a project, there's got to be some kind of value add, which everybody likes the value add. Yep. But for some operators, the value add can be increasing rents and decreasing expenses. For us, that's not a big enough that's not a big enough turnaround.
Yeah.
So we want to have a little bit of extra something that we can do there. So the project at south side of Wilmington was already storage. They just didn't have the building climate controlled. So we cut some roof penetrations in, welded on, engineered some struts at the top there. And we basically climate controlled the whole building, and we were able to double the rents there. So people were paying, $70 for a 10 by 10. And, we did it over time, but, a 10 by 10 climate controlled is $140 now. Mm-hmm. So, that was a very sort of a conversion. I mean, it was already storage, but it was kind of, just converting the space that was already there. It's a pretty light construction lift there. And then we bought a project in Greensboro that was an existing facility with room to expand on the side of it. It had room to do a 40,000 square foot 2-story building. So we're actually we've just completed that. But we pretty much built that one out through the worst time to build. We built it out through 2020, through COVID, the steel increases, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong on that project. Yeah. So we were doing that. We were in that project deep when we kind of started Nomad Capital, and it might've just been in the cycle, but we had a really bad taste in our mouths for ground up construction, because again, like looking back, we would definitely do another ground up now and it would look way different. But, we're building out this ground up construction. It was super hard, super tough. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong there. And then we're like, man, look at these conversions. They're already existing. They're already there. We're kind of like just noticing the two projects side by side. And so, when we started Nomad Capital, we said, hey, before we started Nomad Capital, we did have kind of the idea of, hey, we'll look at any project that makes sense. When it was just me and my dad,
And that was going to be my question to you, is what leads you, or what do you use to source these projects, and how far out is your scope?
So, when we said, hey, we're going to start Nomad Capital, we're going to raise money from investors, we said, we're only going to do self-storage. We're going to get really focused on that. And then we identified our state and our surrounding states. So we're currently in North Carolina. We've got a project opening in about 3 weeks in Georgia. We're in Virginia. We've identified Tennessee and South Carolina as markets we'll look in as well. We don't have any projects there yet.
And when you look at that, is that more looking for builder compliance? Is, certain things each state would offer that's a little bit less, like say North Carolina may be easier to put a storage unit in?
We didn't do that. We kind of just did a kind of a drive radius and said, all right, 8 hours from where we're at, or, 7 hours from where we're at, is we could kind of look in this loop here just for ease of construction, looking at our projects. And then we self-manage. So once they're operational, how often is one of our asset managers going to need to go down there and put their eyes on it? It was kind of just a convenience thing. And it's great because all those markets around us, I mean, we're in an amazing spot here. I mean, the Southeast as a whole is just there's so many growing markets in North Carolina. South Carolina's on fire. Georgia, you know.
Well, yeah, every single state that you're looking at, we're in the best. Those are the best states.
Yeah, and that was kind of like, hey, we're going to look in these states because they're close to us, but also they're great markets. Like it's kind of just happened that way.
So that's the good thing about being in this area and doing the Carolinas. The Carolinas are both booming markets, North and South Carolina, and you know they're only going to get better, in my opinion, as the workplace has shifted since COVID. It's I don't think it's ever going to go back to what it was in these bigger cities. Everybody's coming down here.
Yeah,
with the work from home. So let's go in a little bit further on what you guys have compiled there. So you are looking and identifying, now you're looking at both ground up and doing the conversions. And so when you're identifying a property, are you looking at, obviously you're looking at how much storage is there, and then when you're finding these properties, they're normally, if you're converting, some of these are retail centers, right? So they're in great locations. So what are your criteria you're looking for, and what's like a footage you look at?
So obviously we have a bunch of different things we check during our underwriting. We do a square foot per capita is obviously a big number. How much storage is already in the market? How much can this market absorb? Price point comes into play there. So we kind of have a metric that says, what's our average rent price going to be in this market, price per square foot, and then what's our all-in cost there. So for a market like Raleigh or Charlotte, we can go in and we can spend more on the building. We can spend more on our renovation because we know we can charge more for those units when they're online. In a smaller market like Reidsville, North Carolina, we've got a facility there. Our all-in cost can't exceed X amount of dollars because our rent per square foot is only, that's a metric that we watch very closely. So every market is not the same. It really is two driving factors there. What's our all-in cost going to be? And then what can we rent this facility out when it's stable? Excuse me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, the good thing about what you guys are doing, and so anybody, getting newer into investing, when you're taking the time and getting into a niche like you guys have done, this self-storage, I mean, you guys can probably look at a deal and know in a minute if the deal makes sense. Doesn't matter what the market is. You guys understand all the costs associated, where the markets can be, how to compare the markets, and be where you need to be under the market to make yourself competitive and jump into the new market. All those things, niching down and understanding, that's put you guys a step above anybody else in the area.
Yeah, I think every project we've done has just been more data we can use looking on the next one. So every, construction project, I mean, when you complete a project, you kind of have a new idea of where your baseline HVAC is, what your electrical is going to be per foot. What's trim per foot, So that's been really valuable to get. Every project we complete is so insightful on what we can buy next. That's as we've done. We just put under contract. I think it's our 8th or 9th project with Nomad Capital. Our underwriting has gotten a lot faster, and it's because of the data we've used off of our first 4 facilities that we were able to acquire, build, and watch their lease up. So I think it's kind of a snowball effect. We're able to see some of these facilities that are open. We're able to see what the actual expenses are versus what we projected. We're able to see what is our actual construction costs versus what we projected. And it's giving us a really just narrowing down that underwriting scope of land, just really narrowing that down. So when we do see a project, we can get a pretty good idea pretty quick what we can pay and what that project looks like as a whole for us and for our investors.
That's awesome. So let's dig in a little on how you're obtaining your leads. So are you guys searching a Crexy and a LoopNet or local MLSs, or are you getting deals sourced to you from agents at this point, just in these markets?
Definitely both. I think everybody that's doing things right now, it's both. I mean, we've built a lot of really good relationships with brokers, and we're doing a deal we just got under contract was a deal that our broker on the previous deal had kind of sent over to us. So every time we meet brokers, we obviously say like, hey, here's our box, here's what we're looking for. And so we have them looking for us. And then we use CoStar as probably our main data search. And then of course, Crexy, LoopNet, all the main stuff. Sometimes you can find good deals on there, just things that are labeled wrong, or another reason we love the conversions is, sometimes you'll have a property that's on a LoopNet or a Crexi, and somebody's looking, if it's a retail property, somebody's looking at it and underwriting it as another retail property, and it might not make sense for them because the rents aren't high enough there to justify the purchase price. But what we love about the conversions is we call them asset class conversions. We'll look at a retail space and we don't really care what they're advertising you can buy this retail space on a cap rate for,
Right.
because we're not looking at it as retail. We don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hey, you can buy this retail space on a 7.5 cap. It's like, get that out of here, because it doesn't really apply to our, because somebody will ask me that, hey, what do you buy on? What cap rates do you buy on? And I say, we don't buy on cap rates, because we're converting this asset class from whatever it is, from a warehouse building.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a 87,000 square foot Kmart in Reidsville, North Carolina, and you're looking at it from the side of a retail, it's hard to make it pencil there, because what retailer is going to go in and take 87,000 square feet in Reidsville, North Carolina? It's hard to make that deal work,
And you guys, being in the construction industry, understand you can look at the price per foot as opposed to looking at a cap rate. Look at the price per foot, and what's my replacement cost here? How much would it cost me to take this ground up to get it to this shell and this site work position? They might be at $40 a foot, and I mean, you can't even do the site work barely for the $40.
So the first project we did, you'll appreciate this. The first Kmart we did in Reidsville, North Carolina, 87,000 square feet. We bought it for $12 a square foot.
I mean, that is insane. Right?
I mean, our all-in post-conversion cost is $38 a foot.
That's insane.
And, you can't, so if you just look at it as a replacement, it's like, hey, what rate do you buy on? It's like 250. I mean, it doesn't, it's a little larger than you're used to, sir. It's not the same. It's not the same, right? What?
I mean, my question is, how do you measure the saturation of a market? Because I would think Wilmington, in my mind, is saturated.
It is saturated.
Okay, so
yes, it is saturated. So
I had one thing going for me. That's good.
So there's a quick way to do it. I mean, you take the population in the market and you divide it by the square foot of storage that's already in the market. Okay. That'll give you your square foot per capita per person there, So
and what do you target?
Again, that's kind of hard. Like Wilmington right now, I think is at a 21 rent per capita. National average is 10. Wow. So,
like double.
There's more coming. You do, but you don't, so it's really market dependent. That's, some people will say that's the only metric we check. That's kind of a hard metric to check, really, because if you look at Charlotte, if you look at Nashville, it'll say that it's oversaturated, but when you look at the data,
people coming here are constantly. I guess you look at the metric of that metric, and then you're going to look at the metric of population growth. I guess like that.
Yeah. So that one's kind of a moving target. We definitely look at, okay, what's currently there, what's the growth like? If we go into a market that's growing and it's at 4, that's amazing. Right. But what's funny is over the last 10, 15 years is the national average used to be 8 square foot per capita. It was about 20 years ago, it was about 5. And then it went up to 8, and now it's at 10, and then it's going to go to 12. So the storage industry as a whole is very fascinating on when you look at even like a bigger viewpoint of who's using storage now. Millennials and Gen Z generations are the biggest self-storage users right now. And everybody 15 years ago would have said, oh, well, millennials are not going to, they're not going to use storage, and especially not Gen Z.
Right.
But again, if you're looking at, the bigger picture, there's a lot more multifamily being built. Millennials and Gen Z want to be minimalistic, but they still they're still American.
They're toys.
They've got bikes, they've got all these things. And so, you're also seeing people visit self-storage a lot more. It used to be once or twice a year. Now it's once or twice a month. So the clientele is changing a lot in self-storage, but it's an asset class that's not going anywhere, especially when the majority of people using storage right now, millennials and Gen Z, are using more than their percentage of the population of self-storage right now, which is a great statistic for us, because we see that it's,
Self-storage buildings used to be a complete eyesore everywhere, right? And they would want to hide them. They don't want them anywhere. Now they're making them so nice looking that they're right in the middle, and nobody even knows them. They're just, they've got some, and now they got to be a bunch of storefront, 2-3 story climate control. I mean, these things are nice looking, almost like office retail buildings, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's because people are realizing that there's a need for storage in the middle of in towns. And this is city's way of saying, we're going to let the development, we're going to let the economic growth here, but it's got to look better. And, before it was self-storage was just somebody throwing up sheds and renting them out. He was making money. But, especially operators like us, we have to make these buildings, very well lit, very nice. We've got, stereo systems throughout a lot of our facilities to where, if somebody's going there after hours, there's some soft music playing. We play Christmas tunes, it's got to be more of it can't be like, oh, I've got to go down to the storage unit. It's got to be like, hey, I'm running over to the storage unit.
I'm moving into the storage unit.
Yeah, exactly.
Party
Weirdly enough, a lot of our facilities are right near breweries.
There you go.
No, it just happens to be that way. But it's great. You move in.
I'm gonna write that down as a marketing plan.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. All right, well, let's get into a little bit. So, going back now, you've switched because you guys have grown, obviously, and couldn't self-fund it anymore because too many things happening, and people are bringing you so many deals with what you guys are producing. So, when you got into the syndication deal and started doing syndication model, did you guys set up a 506B or C, or did you start with a fund? Could you run that? So if people wanted to invest with you, how do you guys structure that?
Yeah, so we started out, and we still are currently a 506B syndication. So it's obviously friends and family or a substantive relationship. So we do no generally soliciting. We do no, we don't talk about any of our current projects. We just talk about our past projects. So we are still 506B, and we've done all of our projects that way, kind of just local networks. And every time we talk to somebody, we say, hey, if it's not a fit, we're just telling people about what we're doing. And if it's not a fit, do you have anybody else that you think might be interested in? And it's been really cool to see that growth. So we've got about 65 active investors right now, and about 170 approved investors that can invest with us. But there's a lot of people kind of watching to see what we do because we are a new group, right? We've been around the storage space since 2006. We've been around the building since 2000. My dad got his GC license in 2000. So we're not new to those aspects, but we're a new group coming into the space. I'm a new guy coming to you saying, hey, here's what we're doing. And here's sort of our track record. And our track record looks good right now, but there's a lot of projects that are it's just an early track record.
People might say, oh, we need them full cycle. But I mean, there's a lot of people right now that were great full cycle on the multifamily that are now doing capital calls.
Yeah,
nonstop.
That's true.
So yeah. I don't know how much that matters.
And I see, on that exact thought I've talked to a lot of other syndicator groups that have to prove the model. They have to take something full cycle to prove it to their investors. And so many of them are like, man, I hate to sell this asset. It's great. It's cash producing. We're way below replacement costs. We love the market. There's rent growth, all these things, but we have to prove this model. And I hate that thought of having to sell a great asset. We look at these assets like the golden goose, like it's going to sit there and produce us golden eggs.
Yeah.
Why would we take it out to the slaughterhouse? Let's make sure it's comfy. Let's make sure it's on a silk pillow when it's just cranking out cash every month. Of course, I get the other side from investors, right? They want to see that you had this business plan, you projected to buy this building, convert it, lease it up, and then sell it. And they want to see you execute every aspect of that plan. And so we do know that we're going to have to liquidate some properties. And we're okay with that, again, because of our entry cost, because, there's great equity on the back end of these projects because we're buying them for so cheap, because we're converting them at our cost plus some. I mean, we're, half of probably what you charge.
Well, well,
that was a plug for properties.
Yeah. But what I would say is, you guys, I don't know that it's still more, in my opinion, you guys compared to a normal syndicator, a lot of them, because I also talk to a lot of the other syndicators, they don't have the construction experience, right, that you guys have. So that understanding to me is a big, huge asset that adds a big trust factor. So I don't know if it's that important to go through full cycle, as long as somebody really can trust you, get to know. I mean, I know you, Levi, just from, going to something we'll talk about here in a minute that you guys have put together. But, I've just met you and your father and heard your background story. And then, through things, you can kind of just hear about people, get a feel for someone when you talk to them. And then you can just look at indicators. And then, once you know somebody for a little while, you can kind of start to tell if they're a legit person.
Absolutely.
That, is, genuine and not just out trying to hustle people and get money. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's not at all what you are, which is why I bring that up. So you guys can easily build a trust factor. I mean, just from me getting to know you, I trust you and your father, and you're very legitimate, very kind people and very down to earth people. So that's a great thing. So something that you guys have done to kind of, engage the community around Wilmington, and, others from around the area can definitely join. You guys do a meetup. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that works?
Yeah. So we've been doing that for about maybe 16 months now. It was, we went to a conference, best ever real estate conference. And it's all about syndicating, multifamily, self-storage, car washes, whatever it may be. And so we came back, we wanted to just kind of start that and just let people in Wilmington know what we're doing, and let people know that, hey, we're here, we're based out of Wilmington, we're just talking real estate, with the idea of, hey, let's meet people. Because there's a lot of people that I think have, there's a lot of people that have money, first of all, capital, that have a hard time finding deals. I tell people all the time, like, we're building out we have an office now full of people. That's all we do every day. We look for deals. That's all we do every day, is build out our projects, but we're tracking every dollar that we spend on construction. So we're predicting what our next construction budget is going to be. Like, anybody that's just going to get into self-storage on the side and just say, hey, I'm just going to pick up a self-storage, it's really hard to do, right? Because you're going to go find one that's already listed on market. There's going to be very little turnaround. And for a self-operator, that may be enough juice, the juice may be worth a squeeze, but for us, there's not there, especially when we have investors.
So the difference is, compared to you, and it's very simple to kind of get this clear to anybody listening, the difference when you have what you have set up, you're the contractor, you have now established subs that are going to perform, meet a timeline, do the quality work, not hit you with 50,000 change orders. You don't have to worry with your guys' deal having a contractor that's selling you a false bill of goods, giving you a bad budgetary number that he's going to turn around and overbill you. Those are all the biggest things that can screw up somebody's underwriting model.
Absolutely.
So you've hedged the majority of the things that can make this underwriting model go all crazy and crappy, and then the deal not work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have several investors that are active investors, and they'll look at our returns, they'll look at our projects, and they'll say, oh, well, I can do better than this if I do it myself. And the response is absolutely. You as an active investor can probably do better than the returns we're going to offer you. But there's a key factor there. It's the time, right? Like, if you have the time to go do it and you're a full-time active real estate investor, absolutely, you should go do it yourself. Like, if that's your full-time job. What a lot of people don't realize is they don't have the time, or they want more of their time back, right? So a lot of our investors that are active, that are saying, hey, I'm willing to put this money to work with another group, I'm going to make less of a return, but I'm not going to meet the plumber out there. I'm not going to deal with my manager stealing rent from me. I'm not going to deal with, the bank inspections. I'm not going to deal with finding a contractor. I mean, contractors don't have the best report, right? I mean, we just don't. I mean, there's a lot of shady guys out there doing shady work and doing that. They'll underbid something, and then day one on the job, it's like, hey, here's $100,000 change for it, This is actually what it costs to build this.
For a door, I just need a front window.
necessary to tell you until we were getting started that this is actually an extra 500 grand.
Yeah. So, that's daunting. Like, especially if you don't know how to build something, it's daunting. I mean, most people don't know how to fix their toilets. And,
I'll go through and, help people look at bids that are there, newer investors that other people I'm talking to, and they'll send me, I got these 2 construction quotes. I'm going to go with the lower one. I'm like, well, okay, well, let's just look at them real quick. Well, the lower one here is missing half of the job is why it's lower.
So you want a project with no roof on it. Okay, great. So we're on the same page, right?
But that's why he's cheaper. Right?
Pergola. It's a pergola.
He's going to build you a $4 million project, and the quote is 1 page. So he's got it all in there.
Yeah,
he says he's got it all included, Tony. Well, I'm sure it's all included.
Yeah, so that's. I mean, obviously, it's a selling point of what we tell potential investors is, at the end of the day, we don't want people to invest just because it's like, hey, if you want to invest in this project, we'd love to have you. We'd love to make you money, but if not, obviously. There's zero pressure, right? I mean, at the end of the day, people need to invest in what they believe in, and they need to invest in the group that they believe in. I think that's really a bigger thing is, people invest in people, not projects. And so that's what we've been building out. That's one of the reasons we started the meetup. We want our current investors to meet us and see us, see who we are, drinking a beer, having pizza, meet our team. They see us, they see our offices, they see our messy desks. We're not perfect people. We're like, hey, we're out here getting it done. Yeah. We've got dirty boots. Sometimes we'll come in from a site walk and we've got our Red Wings on. It's like, hey, we're here. This is who we are. So I think another part of the real estate meetup was we're open people, right? Like come and talk with us, come and we're not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to say, hey, here's where we're at on the project. And we have a lot of our active investors that come to this meetup and just in person we'll ask like, hey, what's going on with Gastonia? Well, it's like, well, actually, one of my guys is up there today. Here's the pictures, he took these today. Like this is what we're doing. So that's been really, really cool. So,
yeah. And it's great for the area. There's not really a lot of places to go if you're interested in commercial investing in Wilmington. So, it's a great thing that you guys have put together, a meetup, and people get to know people. It's just the commercial investing is commercial real estate market as a whole is a lot smaller. I mean, everybody understands the residential side and residential deals, and they're easy because people live in apartments and homes. So it's easy to understand and associate with those. These commercial deals, everybody thinks you need a ton of money to get into them. And it's just so complicated, which goes back to you guys offering people that are working a full-time job that want to invest in something that can stay working their full-time job, make some secondary income, some passive income, can, find someone local like you and just go and give them some money. And, you're right around the corner. So how often do you give updates to your investors? How does that work?
So we do a monthly update. We give our investors a monthly update through construction. So every month it's, hey, here's the progress. Here's our projected. We kind of when we start the project, we say, hey, here's kind of our projected timeline to finish. We don't update that every month because, obviously if there's a major change, we do. But so investors get a monthly update through the build out. And then once we open the facility and we start leasing it up, they still get a monthly update until we reach about 65% occupied. And then that's when we call it stabilized. That's when the property is stabilized. And then the updates go to once a quarter. And so once a property is stabilized, they'll get a quarterly update and they'll also get their quarterly distribution. So we're actually super excited. Our second project that we did, we think we're going to be able to distribute this quarter or next quarter, which is about 8 to 10 months ahead of our pro forma. Wow. So we told investors that we would get their first distribution sometime in 2024, and we're beating that by about 8 months right now. So we're super excited about that. Obviously, it's a flex moment, so we're using that and we're saying, hey, we got this. And
comparatively speaking, you're talking about a distribution, and we'll just go back. All the multifamily syndicators are talking about how much money can I get from you right now?
Yeah,
right? A little bit different scenario, and especially in this kind of a market, to be able to say that's outstanding. Right?
Yeah, we're super excited about that. We're excited to actually wire, our investors always wire money in. We're excited to wire money out to them and say, hey, here's your quarterly distribution. Obviously we're still in lease up, so it's not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's, hey, here's money. Your money's working for you. And you didn't have to, You weren't, raising the rents. You weren't dealing with the tenant insurance. You weren't dealing with any of this. Here's a rent check. So that's our communications to investors. And of course, like we have an investor relations team, and anybody in our office, we're always available for our investors if they have a call or question. If they have a question about the underwriting, I'll get them on the phone with our underwriting acquisitions manager. So that's pretty much our set communications with our investors. And it's been great. I think everybody's been happy with it. So
that's awesome. So if people want to reach you and find out more about Nomad Capital, what's the best way to do that?
Best way is probably our website, nomadcapital.us. And it's got pretty much all of our stuff on there. There's a connect page. There's an about self-storage. There's the 4 different types of storage that we look for, the 4 different risk versus reward buckets. There's a lot of information on there. And then of course a contact page. So nomadcapital.us is probably the best way to reach out. And then it, we'll go to our whole team. And if there's specific questions, we can divvy it or, put you in touch with the right person.
And for your investor meetup, is that going to be posted there, or is that something you do social media?
So we do it on social media as well. But it is the second Thursday of every month in Wilmington at our office, which is 616 Market Street. And we do 6 to 8:30. So we try to have at least 20 to 30 minutes of something educational, some content for people. It's not just us. It's not a sales pitch every month of, hey, here's Nomad Invest.
I'm going to go up front and tell you a little bit.
No. Yeah. So last month we had another local multifamily syndicator talk about his business model. And obviously he's in the same space as us, raising money from investors, but we had him talk at our meetup. I think there's, there's so much out there. There's so much building. There's so much money to be made. There's so many projects to tackle that, the last thing we want is a scarcity mindset of, hey, here's what we have. I think good things happen when people talk. And so we had him talk about his business model. And obviously there was a lot of people interested in that. We've had commercial bankers, real estate brokers, just talking about kind of anything that we think would be useful in the commercial space. So,
well, in that piece, you were talking about the trust that alone would build it, when you obviously you're not trying to keep it right here, you're keeping the conversations open, and that's going to bring in a ton of people that get information, and some will come your way and some may go the other, but that's fantastic.
You guys are in the space of creating wealth. So there's unlimited wealth out there in the world. It's just, you got to be in the space of creating. When you're creating wealth, there's unlimited wealth out there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're so happy that you took the time to come in here. Well, hopefully we'll get you back more. Get you back again down the road so we can get an update on what you guys have going on. And man, we sincerely appreciate you sitting down with us. It's been awesome to get to know you further.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Levi.
Yep.